Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode. Click on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Heidi Chumley. She's a family physician, and she's the dean at the Ross University School of Medicine. Her most recent KevinMD article is Proposing Solutions to End Bias in the Medical Residency Selection Process. Heidi, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It is great to be back.
So you've been on the show multiple times. For those who want to hear Heidi's story, just click on the upper right-hand corner, search for Heidi's name, previous episodes where she can share her story. But today we're going to jump straight into your most recent article, which is Proposing Solutions to End Bias in the Medical Residency Selection Process. Now, tell us, how did this article come together?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, this is the third time I think I've been with you, and it is the third part in a series of articles. And the series of articles began with some barriers around getting into medical school, some challenges between medical school, being successful in medical school. And then this one really gets to the continued challenges that people have as they look for and enter residency programs. So part of a series continues the same purpose, which is really just to shine a bit of a light on some of the things about our system that make navigating this whole process more difficult for some of us than others.
All right, so tell us, what is the situation today? How are these medical students and residents, how are they facing bias today?
So one of the things that we know is that the number of residents who identify as underrepresented minority is a smaller percentage than those who do so in medical school, and certainly a smaller percentage than in the general population. And what we also know is that the residents who don't make it through, who actually don't make it through their residency, are overrepresented, if you will, by underrepresented minorities. So we've got groups of people who are not only less likely to be in residency, but less likely to finish. And as I was working on this series of articles and got to this point, it's sort of natural to compare that, what is happening around the time people are being selected for residency has a lot of the parallels to what is happening around the time people are being accepted for medical school. And I can give just a couple of examples about that. I think that will make this come to life a little more. So just as when people are being evaluated for medical school, where they went to college makes a difference. There are people who are thought of differently if they've attended community college than if they've attended, a tier 1 school. And I think we all sort of realize people make very different decisions about where they may go to school. And some of that is based on the opportunities that they have, the amount of money that they can spend, what they know, et cetera. So fast forward now, you've got a group of people who have made those types of decisions. They end up in different types of medical schools. And certainly during the residency selection process, there's a very different opinion of people who are entering the process based on the type of medical school that they went to, whether it was a U.S. allopathic or an international medical school. And that can certainly, continue to perpetuate some of the challenges that our students have. The second example I would give is that if you start off in medical school with a bit of a gap to close, and I think we've talked about before, a lot of times the level of preparation of people as they come into medical school can differ based on the opportunities they've had in life up to that point. If you come in with a bit of a gap to close, then as you get to the residency selection process, the same things that you were behind a little bit on. If your MCAT score wasn't as high as some of your peers, that generally translates into a step 1 score, not as high as your peers. And we're almost to pass fail on step 1, but generally a score had been really very important. And it may translate into a step 2 CK score that is passing, it's meeting the bar, it's meeting the level that is required to become a physician, but it may look lower than some of your peers. And those are again, I think, a good example of how something can just perpetuate its way through the system and continue to cause some challenges.
Now, when you talk about the different residencies, are there any specific ones you feel where unconscious bias is a little bit more prevalent? Primary care specialties versus surgical specialties, for instance?
oh, you're going to get me in trouble with at least half of your audience. No, I think it's actually fairly pervasive throughout the discipline of medicine. And as a physician myself, I can see where that comes from, right? I mean, we like to kind of believe and hold on to, if you will, that every bit of the success we've had, becoming physicians, comes from our own, hard work and gifts and skills. And while I don't at all want to diminish anybody's hard work and gifts and skills, not even my own, mm-hmm. there is a realization I think that people have to come to at some point in time, just understanding if they've had a different level of opportunity than other people. My own background, I had a different level of opportunity. I came from a place that had a lot of opportunity, and I know that, and I realize that. And I don't know that is that realization is spread differently across different specialties. My own background is in primary care, so I like to think we see such a broad swath of the population, but I don't know that that's really contained any specialty or not. The one thing I would say is that there are clearly some specialties that are more competitive than others, mm-hmm. and the more competitive a specialty is, I think the harder it is to really figure out how you're going to make selections about who gets to enter that profession.
Now, what are some of the things that medical students can do to even the playing field, so to speak, when it comes to underrepresented minorities applying to residency?
Yep. Yeah. So great question. I would give a couple of pieces of advice. One is that the network is really, really important. You need to have mentors. You need to have people who understand the specialty that you're interested in. Make those connections while you're in medical school. Get your medical school to help you if you can't find those connections on your own. But the network remains still very important in medicine, in understanding and coming across as the type of person that somebody's going to select for the residency program. The second piece of advice I would give the people, and particularly as we see more and more of the specialties begin to use the signaling. I don't know if that has come up in some of your shows or not, but
tell us about that.
Okay, certainly. So a few years ago, in an effort to perhaps make it a little bit easier for residency program directors to figure out who to invite for interview, a new process called signaling was introduced. And this is it's a choice of each discipline. It's a choice of the student to engage in this process. But I think it's 19 specialties this year, as we headed into the match, had a signaling program. And what that allows a student to do is say, hey, I'm particularly interested in your program, to a specific program. And as you can imagine, every specialty went about this differently, right? Mm-hmm. you know the differences in specialties. So some specialties have very few, like 3 signals. You think about, you're going to apply at a bunch of places, 3. Some have a lot more, 15, 20, in that range. And there's becoming a bit of a strategy around this. So the second thing I would tell people is to really understand, read everything you can about that signaling process. If you're entering a program that is using it, it's new. So the more you know about it and how to use it, how to strategize and help it work for you, I think the better that you're going to be. And the third thing I always tell people is you're going to have to stand out. You're going to have to stand out for some reason. And one of the best ways to stand out with any particular program is to show your compatibility with that program. Whether it is you're from the same state, or you understand the patient population they work with, and that's the patient population you want to work with. Any way you can, on an individual level with programs, attach yourself to something that is very specific to them. Goes a really long way. It means you got to do a lot of homework, particularly if you're applying to a lot of programs, but it is something that's very important.
Now, you're a medical school dean. You've written a series when it comes to some of the disadvantages underrepresented medical students have and some of the disparities. Why is that so important to you? Why are you so passionate about this topic?
Yeah. Yeah. I spent the first part of my career in senior leadership at a US medical school, and we did all the things I think that are continuing to be talked about as ways to diversify the physician workforce. And we really think of yourself as doing holistic, admissions and et cetera. But then about when I made the move out to the Caribbean 10 years ago and began to talk with the students, it's story after story of these very remarkable people that had just had a life so different from mine, managed to find their way to medicine and against so many different odds, and then just to watch them grow, cross the stage, graduate, get into residency programs. That is what has really made this a passion for me. And then, as with anything, you can get better at it, right? Because not everyone who comes is successful, but you can learn how to really work with people to find out all the different things that can be impeding their success, partner with them. And the more people with the types of stories that I get to hear every day that get into medicine, I think it makes us all better off.
Tell us one of these stories. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but give us an example of one of those stories that particularly struck you about some of your students at where you work.
Yes, I will. And I'm not going to give her name,
Of course.
but she might recognize herself if she listens to your show. But we recently had a graduate who went to a program up in the north and got a residency position, her first choice up in the north. And this was her first choice because she had worked there. She had actually worked in that hospital. And the reason she worked in that hospital for 6 years was because she was a single mom. She did well in college, but had a baby as age 17, made it through college, great scores actually, did not think that she was going to be able to do medical school. Certainly heard from a lot of people that that's not for you. You're a young mom and et cetera. She worked for 6 years and then she decided to go back to medical school. She found Ross, went there, and with her young child, graduated, and then went back and into a residency program at the very hospital where many people had, discouraged her from pursuing, and the one that was attached to the medical school that had rejected her. So it's those kinds of stories that are just really, make it worth it.
Now, from a more macro perspective, what would you like to see fixed when it comes from the residency standpoint in order to decrease some of these biases that are out there? If you were in charge, what would you like to see fixed? How would you do that?
Yeah. Well, tactically, I would turn off the filter that lets residency program directors filter by international school or US. But I absolutely understand that so many applications come in and that they need to have some filters. And so other than that very tactical move, which I wouldn't actually get to do, helping people really just get over this idea that the only people that are in international medical schools are there because of something that they did not do as well as those who are in their who are their US counterparts. And if I could just change that one mindset and have people take a look at students who or I guess they're doctors at this point, at the doctors who really had to take a different pathway, who cared so much about the wanting to be a physician that they were willing to take a different pathway. Just take a look. Don't have to choose them. Choose who you think is best, but give them a look. That would be the one thing that I would change.
We're talking to Heidi Chumley. She's a family physician and she's a dean at the Ross University School of Medicine. Her KevinMD article is titled Proposing Solutions to End Bias in the Medical Residency Selection Process. Heidi, tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the KevinMD audience.
Well, I think I would come back to some of the things that I have said to your audience before, which is that if you are a practicing clinician, you are often in a place of opportunity to make a big difference in people's lives. And whether they are people who come to shadow in your office, who are thinking about medicine, whether they are learners who are rotating with you, you really do have an opportunity to learn their story, to understand where they may be coming from, and for the group of people who has had a very different set of opportunities than many of us. They may have had maybe similar to whoever I'm talking to, but for that group of students, give them a level of encouragement, show them that they can enter health profession, enter medicine if that's the one that they're interested in, and help them understand the pathways to do that. So that would be my only ask. Just that one thing.
Heidi, thank you so much for sharing again your time and insight. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.